Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our annual product release event. I hope we have technology with us today. We've just been having some issues with Facebook here, so it's all been a bit shaky the last few minutes here, but we think we're live. We think you're all with us, so we're gonna roll and hold our thumbs. So as you might know, we have an annual product release cycle at Capture, which means that once per year we will release the fruit of our last year's work as a new software release to you. Today is a special live webcast, not only because of the product release, but also for a few other reasons. For one, it's the World International Theatre Day today, which is great. And also it marks the 1-year celebration of our live webcasts. So our first live webcast was last year when we released Capture Nexum. So it's great to be back here again 1 year later to be showing you our next product release. So without much further ado, let me introduce you to this year's new product release, which is Capture 2018. As you can see, we have changed the naming strategy from the nickname-based one that we had before. That started with the release of Capture Polar, went on with Argo, Atlas, and last year Nexum. So now we're going back to a year-based product naming strategy. And I say going back to because we did in fact have Capture 2005 back between the years 2005 to 2008. And one of the reasons we moved away from the year-based naming back then was the fact that we did not have an annual release strategy, so by the time we got to 2009, 2005 was beginning to feel a bit old. Also, by referring to the release by the year, it is easier for us to already start talking about things like Capture 2019, although that is very far away. At least there is a name for it, which means we don't need to have silly internal working names for the next product release, which can get a bit confusing for us. Anyway, I'm going to be going through the key new features of Capture 2018. I'm going to show you some things hands-on and some things I'm going to go through with the help of my slides here. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about the practicalities of the release itself in terms of downloads, upgrades, and things like this. And finally, by the end, we're going to have a Q&A session. Bear in mind that this time we are only going to be covering questions directly related to the release. So no other general Capture questions, only questions about Capture 2018. So you can start typing questions already now in the comments field below the video here in Facebook, given that everything still works. And I'll be getting back to these at the end of the webcast. So let's dive straight into the new features of Capture 2018, starting with what we call native feel. Native feel is all about making the software work in symphony with the operating system the way Microsoft and Apple intend for software to work and look in their operating systems. That means staying up to date with technology changes in the operating systems and ensuring that we follow their human interface guidelines. So one thing that's happened with Windows over the past years, and specifically with the Windows Creators Update, is something that is awkwardly named Windows Per Monitor DPI Awareness version 2. This is essentially about the ability to have different DPI settings on different monitors. This is important because your built-in laptop monitor will have a different pixel size from your separately attached 4K 32-inch monitor, or a lot of other monitors as well, because pixel sizes vary a lot between monitors. And when you connect monitors with different DPIs, you need to adjust the scale of text and graphics so that visually the sizes appear consistent across the monitors. Another reason why this technology is important for us to support is that an application that does not support it gets rendered in a slightly fuzzy way. So if you have a DPI setting on your monitor that is anything else than the 96 DPI or 100% scaling, as it's called in the settings these days, then Windows is actually going to stretch your application in a way that makes things look fuzzy. But now that Capture 2018 supports this technology, you will have crisp rendering of your Capture windows on all monitors on Windows. Lots of Windows here. Furthermore, we've also done some adjustments on Mac OS, where Capture already supported what on Mac OS is the same thing as the DPI stuff, though this has been supported on Mac OS since Capture Nexon. But the changes we've done relate to two things. Number one is keyboard modifiers, where we have made sure that in Capture you now use Shift and Command for any multi-select operations, rather than Shift and Control as we used before. And this is good for two reasons. To begin with, it's how it's supposed to be on Mac OS. You are supposed to have the Command key for individual object multi-selection and Shift key for range-based multi-selection. And this leaves the Control key unused by Capture, enabling it to be used for other things such as the Control click, which on Mac OS emulates a right mouse button click. We've also paid some attention to the layout of Capture on Mac OS, ensuring that distances between text labels, buttons, areas, and windows are consistent with the guidelines for Mac OS, making Capture look more natural on Mac OS. So moving on to less cosmetologic features, we've done a major redesign of the project window in Capture. This has been done for a number of reasons. Primarily, the old design, in fact, has been around pretty much since Capture 3.0, which is many years ago now, in a time where display resolutions was much smaller and also had a 4:3 aspect ratio rather than a widescreen aspect ratio. We've also done the redesign in order to, or as a continuation of the high DPI and scaling changes, because with higher resolution on screen, icons needs to be redrawn in a larger size so they don't look pixelated. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, we needed to redesign the project window because it was difficult to support larger projects and larger designs with the old design. So this bit I want to show you hands-on with a little bit of a tour live in Capture. So as you can see, I have a project file loaded, and what I'm going to be showing you is all about the project window. And we're going to start with the Design tab. As you can see, we have gotten rid of the tree view navigation that we had on the left-hand side of the window. And this is good for two reasons. To begin with, the tree view that we had before was in fact combining navigation with project content. That means that the more project content you had, the more difficult it was to navigate. And also, the second reason, whenever you were working on, let's say, layers, you could also see the plots, materials, and other things in there, which results in a more cluttered workspace. So this has been changed in favor of a flat category list, which is more like a drill down filter in different sorts of content in your project. The first category is the project category, which is very similar to the project settings that we had before. And the second category is selected items, which again works just as you would expect. The first category where we start seeing changes is the views category. Here, rather than having 3 separate panes for each of the alpha, beta, and gamma views, we have gathered all of the views into a single page with 1 column per view. This allows you to compare the settings between the views much more easily. It gives you a better overview of the view settings. And also, which is quite important, it makes it easier to make changes without accidentally editing the wrong view, which was something that we saw as being quite common actually. Moving on to layers, where perhaps we have the most interesting changes. As you can see, we now have a spreadsheet style view of the layers that uses the width of the design tab very well. This spreadsheet view allows you to select and edit all the layers in the design, and it also allows you to select more than 1 layer at a time, which is something that was not possible in the previous design. This is good for a number of reasons. Now, to begin with, it means that all operations like delete or the operations available under the More button, like selecting associated objects or adding layers to filters, which I will get back to, can now be done for more than 1 layer at a time. Now, thanks to the fact that you can now edit the layers with the keyboard, it is much easier to make mass changes. In fact, you can even select a number of layers and edit all of them at the same time. Now I'm using the return key on the keyboard, but I could also use the mouse to make this change. This type of multi-editing works equally well on colors or paperweight or things like the locked property. In addition to this, we've also ensured that column sorting works well for all of the columns, which means it is easy to group layers together based on color or paperweight or name, giving you in fact a few different ways of navigating larger sets of layers. I would also like to point out a user interface pattern that we have reused from Mac OS. It's based on the idea that any list of items that you can edit ends with the Add, Delete, and More button. So as you can see on the right-hand side of this view, where you can add and delete layers, you have Add, Delete, More buttons. Whereas on the left-hand side, where we have the categories, there are no Add or Delete buttons because the categories are fixed. This is a concept that we've applied throughout the user interface to make it easier to identify which views are in fact interactive and which are simply lists of objects. So let's move on to filters. Filters is what used to be layer sets. It's based on exactly the same concept, with the one major change that we've added the DMX universes into the mix. So with filters, you can now filter out not only layers, but also DMX universes. And just as in the layer view, we have multi-select editing for easy addition and removal of multiple layers or DMX universes from a filter. And we have multi-select both in the editing section for the filter as well on the filter themselves, which you can now, well, delete is actually the only one available here more or less, but it makes it much easier to work with a large number of filters, and especially when you have a lot of layers that you want to filter. So progressing down the category list here, we also have scenes. These work just as before. Materials, on the other hand, again, have a multi-selection based user interface that allows you to select more than one material at a time and edit any of the material properties for a number of materials in a go. And again, multi-select operations for things like select using objects and deletion. We've also thrown in a new function that allows you to select all unused materials in your design for the purpose of making it easy to purge unused materials in the design. Custom gobos and frame lists work as before. But when we come to the reports, you will notice a difference in that we now have a preview window available for the selected report. This makes it a lot easier to verify that you've selected the right report before you open it for editing or printing. And in some cases, when you actually want to see the report, seeing it in the preview window is actually all you need, and you may not even have to open the editing window of the report. The plot styles category looks very much like the materials category in that you can select multiple plot styles at a time and edit their properties together. This makes it a lot easier to add or remove information from multiple plot styles in a go. And finally, we have the plots category, which, just as the reports category, features the preview of the plot you have selected. This concludes the changes in the design tab, which make it a lot easier to work with larger designs, and you will be a lot more efficient in the design here in the new design tab. So let's move on to the universes tab. Now, as you can see already, there are some changes here as well. And the number one and most obvious change is in that we've dropped the list of external universes in favor of a preview of the selected universe. It is in fact more than just a preview, in that you can interact with the universe here as you would in the separate universe window. This means that you can drag and drop fixtures straight into the universes tab without having to open a separate universe window. So you have the same functionality available right away. The left-hand side sees some changes as well. The most notable one dealing with the way universes sort and manipulate in the design. It used to be that when you renamed a universe, it changed position in the list, and with that, it could also change, or it would change, which external universe it was linked to, unless you had done a manual override. Now, this could lead to some messy situations and confusing situations, which we have gotten rid of now with the new design, where you can choose whether you want to sort by the universe name or the patch base individually. So if I rename the C universe to X, you can see it remains at position 3, excuse me, although I've changed the name. I could sort by the name column instead, and as you can see, it still remains on patch base 3. If you want to make a manual override, and you want to hook it up to another external universe than the default one, the automatic one, then you would do that in this drop-down list that shows you all the externally available universes. And again, thanks to multi-select, you have operations like resetting the levels available for a range of universes. I'd also note briefly that another benefit of the redesign is that if you're working in a presentation file, you can now also open exactly this view of the universes to view universe connectivity within a presentation file. So let's move on to the last tab I want to show you, which is the library tab. Now, if there is one major feature request which has been massively reiterated to us, and there is one part of Capture that people have wanted to have improved, then it is the library tab. The previous design had a number of issues, and as you can see, we have moved away from the tree style user interface we had, and again gone for a flat category list on the left-hand side. So starting at the top in the first category, which is called built-in, this features the library elements that are, in a sense, not actually part of the library. They are more built into the software. Things like distances, the water jets, and the report item, which is something that I'll be getting back to later. The second category is called recent. This contains the 30 last library objects that you've used. Now, I know that a lot of you are going to ask us if we're going to do a favorites category, if we're going to do an inventory category, and so on. And I believe yes, but that is something for the future at this point. Moving on, and as you would expect, we have the objects category with the built-in shapes and the library objects like tables, etc. We have a materials category, which now also features previews of the materials. Then we have a truss category, which also features previews of the truss items. and perhaps more importantly, sees the search function we had before replaced with a filter function. Now, the subtle but important difference between a search and a filter function is that a search function tends to be more fuzzy and inclusive than a filter function. So if I type H40V into the filter, you will see that I'm only getting H40V pieces from ProLight. Now, thanks to the fact that I'm in the truss category, there's no risk of getting things like gobos or fixtures that happen to have something similar to H40V in their names. It also makes the search faster because it is now in fact only searching in the trusses as opposed to the whole library. And I can get even more specific. So if I want a 4-meter piece, I can add dash L400, and as you can see, it picks up the product number accurately, and I'm getting that one single piece of truss in there. There is also some additional filtering capabilities in here that, of course, we will be extending as we move on into the other categories as well. So moving on to fixtures, we also have some, well, preview is the wrong word, but we do have some product images for a large number of fixtures in the library. Atlabase, our library provider, they are working on adding more product images for as many products as possible, but there are thousands of products, so it is taking a bit of time. But of course, for new products, there will be images right away. So moving on, as you would expect, we have the symbols with preview, and also filters, again with preview of the colors and preview of the gobos as well. And what is great with the preview in the new library tab is that it's not just previewing the one item you've selected. You can actually see the preview of a large number of items at the same time. And this makes it a lot easier to spot the one item you're looking for, so that rather than stepping through each of them individually to view the image, you can scan the list visually in the previews. So as you can see, it's a whole new experience in the library tab, and one that we are confident is going to make you a lot more efficient when working and feel, well, generally more pleasant. So this concludes my tour of the new project window. Let's move back and see what other changes we have in store. Another large part of the user interface is the rendering engine. The rendering engine covers the rendering of both wireframe, paperwork, and live in the design views, as well as plot rendering, focus sheet export, and movie rendering. As you know, our current rendering engine is based on OpenGL and has been since the introduction of Capture 2005, which is now 13 years ago. So, although OpenGL has served us well, we have essentially hit a dead end. And that is for 3 reasons. So number one is that Apple quite recently decided to not add new OpenGL features to Mac OS. The reason for this is that Apple have introduced their own API, which is called Metal, and so they are putting all their efforts into Metal rather than OpenGL, which means that new features that we do kind of need in OpenGL are not going to be available in the future. We've also had, reason number two, a lot of instability issues, and it used to be plaguing mostly Windows users that the OpenGL drivers were unstable, full of bugs, and unpredictable. And as things are today in the gaming industry, then very few, if any, games today are based on OpenGL. Most of them are all based on DirectX. And in fact, Windows itself uses DirectX to render the user interface. And on Mac OS, Metal is used to render the user interface. So as you might understand, the DirectX and Metal drivers are much more heavily tested and a much higher priority for both Microsoft and Apple. And the third reason is that even though OpenGL is developing, now that fewer games are using it, it's not developing in the same way as DirectX and Metal. There are much better development tools available for us for DirectX and Metal, so we can do greater things for you guys much faster by changing to DirectX and Metal. So with Capture 2018, we are rolling out a new rendering engine, and the rollout is going to continue throughout spring. It starts with the release of Capture 2018, and if all goes well, it will be finalized in 2 to 3 months before summer. One of the reasons we need to roll it out is that we need your help in testing our new rendering engine on as many hardware combinations as possible. Because even though we have had our beta testers testing it, the number of actual hardwares out there is frankly vast, and we have no practical means of testing on all of the hardwares ourselves, because we would need to have literally 300, 400, 500 computers to do this. So when you download and run Capture 2018, it will by default be running the old rendering engine, which is OpenGL based. In order to enable the new rendering engine, you need to go into the Capture options and change the setting called Legacy OpenGL Rendering to No. And then when you start Capture, in the title bar of Capture, it should no longer read OpenGL. In that case, you will be running the new rendering engine. It is worth noting that the requirement is DirectX 11 on Windows, and on Mac OS, the requirement is Mac OS 10.13 High Sierra and a Metal-capable Mac. And as a general rule of thumb, now I may be getting the year wrong, but I think the year is 2012, so Macs from 2012 and on should have Metal support. I will add that Mac Pro users are likely also to have Metal support because of special treatment from Apple for Mac Pro users. So what are the benefits of the new rendering engine? Well, number one, stability. The new drivers should be, or we are quite confident are, more stable, with the possible exception of Mac OS, because it is newer on Mac OS than DirectX is on Windows. Another good benefit is that we can get a lot more performance out of DirectX and Metal than we could from OpenGL. And that in turn means that we can add new cool features to the rendering engine much faster in the future. However, we have also added a few new visualization features to Capture 2018. One of them is the ability to visualize moving heads with LED panels, such as the ones from Ayrton and Elation. So it's the moving head thing with an LED panel that takes a media feed and presents this on a typically square LED panel. We've also added a white RGB mode to the texture generators of materials. And finally, and also highly requested, is a new rendering setting which is called hue clamp that can help you alleviate the issues with white apertures in the rendering. What hue clamp does is it restricts the color variations that come from simulating intensity differences, so that instead of going white out, they will go to the actual color, in a sense, the actual hue of the fixture. The downside of this is that it's much harder to tell intensity differences in the visualization, and it looks quite far away from what you're used to in a digital camera. However, for pre-programming purposes, it is very useful. So that concludes what I wanted to talk about the user interface and the rendering engine. Let's move on to some other features of Capture 2018, starting with design and paperwork related features. So if top one requested feature was a change in the library tab, then number two might well be the ability to add custom things to the reports. So we've added what we call the report item widget, which is available in the library, and you can drag and drop into your design and lets you add anything to the report. Here, for example, although I imagine it's difficult to read, I've added a report item widget to count 2 red slings. And as you clone this report item widget, every time you clone it, you will have another set of 2 red slings. Of course, the reports will count them. It will sum up the weight as well as the rating if it's an item that has a power consumption. And we've also, in addition to the report item widget, we've also added a few other items so that they count in the report, including rigging points, which was another commonly requested feature. We've also done a series of enhancements to the way Capture deals with trusses. So number one is that we've added a number of truss types to the visualization. Remember, Capture has dynamically generated truss models, which means Capture needs to understand each truss type in order to render it. We have added a number of ladder corners and triangular corners, as well as circular triangular truss that has the apex in or out of the circle. We have also added simulation of different types of bracing. And what I mean by that is that some trusses, they have diagonal bracing, some trusses have orthogonal bracing, some even have a mix of diagonal and orthogonal bracing, and they have different such on the top, bottom, or sides of the truss. So this information is being worked into the library, as well as the new truss types. As you can understand, it's quite a work to go through it. We have most of the library covered already at the point of the release. But if there is a specific brand that you would prioritize, then please let us know and we'll see what we can do. Another thing that we're working on in the department of truss enhancement is visualizing the differences between different types of truss endings. So at the moment, all Capture truss visualizes as spigoted with an outline of braces at the end of the truss. We are also adding support to visualize platings as well as crossed bracings at the end of the truss, which is going to make well, both the paperwork and the visualization look more accurate. And this is also something that will be rolled out throughout Capture 2018. Probably most of it will be done before summer, but again, if there is a brand you prioritize, please let us know. Another new concept in Capture 2018 is fixture locations. Now in Capture, as you don't need to physically rig a fixture to a truss, Capture has not really had a concept of where a fixture is located apart from its X, Y, and Z coordinates. With Capture 2018, Capture understands which truss is closest to the fixture and can make some calculations based on that. So for one, if you name the trusses in your design, so for instance, you might have a truss construction that you call LX1. It might be a bar or a number of truss pieces, it doesn't really matter. If you call them all LX1, then Capture will understand that the fixtures close to LX1 are in fact hung on LX1. This enabled us to have a new report, which is called the Fixture Locations report, that breaks down fixtures and truss items by this location. You can also go into each fixture individually and override the location so that Capture doesn't use the closest truss for the specific occasions where you want to do something. Well, trusses are sometimes very close to each other, and in corners you may need to override which truss you actually intend to use, for instance. Or in cases where you have imported a structure, like a scaffolding structure, and you want to name the locations for fixture, although you don't have a Capture truss to do it with. Fixture location also enables you to do things like selecting a pipe and then having Capture also select all fixtures rigged to that pipe. So it's a great tool that affects editing as well as reports, but also data export, because CSV export or DWG export, which I will get back to later, now also exports fixture location information. Another very sought after feature in Capture has been the ability to scale symbols freely. So in Capture 2018, we have added two ways of scaling symbols. One of them is by using a plot style, where you can set a global symbol scale. And the other one is individually per fixture, where you can also set a scale. The individual fixture scale combines with the plot style scale. So if you have put 150, let's use another example. If you put 200% individual scale and 200% plot style scale, you end up with a symbol that is 4 times as large. I do have to point out though that when I say, confusing myself here. Getting ahead of myself, let's save that for later. Moving on, import and export. So we have a number of improvements in the department of import and export. And again, a very sought after feature has been the ability to import plots and paperwork from other projects. So we have added to the file menu an option called Import Project Content. It allows you to select a Capture project file and reuse its layers, filters, reports, plot styles, and plots. You can make some specific choices exactly of what you want to reuse, but it's as simple as that to grab, let's say, the plots of another design into your project. Now here is a package that we are very excited about, that we have invested quite a bit of time on, and it's an improved DWG export. Capture used to export polyphase meshes for all objects. This had a number of limitations, and the export was in fact very simplistic. Now we have improved the DWG export to a level where it's about as good as we think it could possibly be. To begin with, each object exports individually as a block or a block reference. This means that if you have a fixture type or a truss type, and you have more than one of them, there is one block definition and as many block references as there are instances of the specific type of truss or fixture or symbol or even any other object. The export also respects grouping by using blocks and block references. So a group of objects will be a block, and inside that block definition you will find individual blocks for each object. We have also attributed all the blocks properly. That means that a fixture is attributed with all relevant information, such as the manufacturer, the name of the fixture, the patch, the circuit number, the location. which means that the DWG export no longer only contains the model, but now in fact carries the full patch information of your design, enabling a large number of possible workflows, especially such involving block replace operations once you've gone into your CAD software. On top of this, we have also added export for symbols, and by symbols now I mean things like rigging points and information symbols that were not previously exported at all. And we have also added export of measurements, both angles and distances, and they export as first-class DWG dimensions. And as could be seen in this picture, although it's pretty tiny, the measurements or dimensions in DWG come out exactly the way they were in Capture. But of course, in DWG, they have more options than you have available in Capture, but all information is conveyed in here and is available for you in the DWG. So this enables a lot of workflows also involving things such as rigging points and dimensions, which were impossible to do before. Now, we've also done a lot of improvements on CSV import and export. We have added XYZ rotation information on both import and export, as well as the option to change which XYZ system you're using on export, I believe, which means you can choose between, the one Capture uses, which has Y up and Z downstage, and the other system, which is popular, which sees Z being up and Y being upstage. We've also added support for import of UTF-16 text-encoded CSV files. These come from WYSIWYG, for instance. And we have pre-configured the CSV import to automatically pick up on CAMSYS Magic Q and WYSIWYG export files, so that there's a minimal amount of configuration necessary as you import these files. On the topic of data export and fixtures, we have also added export of the MA2 XML fixture information format. So now we have, in addition to CSV and HOG4 export, the MA2 export option. This gives you the choice of either exporting all fixtures in a single layer or using the layers in your Capture design, the Capture layers, or generating a layer per fixture type. During the export, you also have the option of naming the fixture types and giving them the fixture type numbers that you will be using in MA. If you don't do this, you will still be importing them as dimmers in MA, and you're able to change the fixture type afterwards in MA. And of course, this data also includes the XYZ position and orientation, which means if you need to use the XYZ features available in MA, you can do that as well post-import. So this, I believe, is a bit of a game changer for a lot of MA users. So this covers the most important bits of Capture 2018 that I wanted to show you. There are more features in there. We will of course be publishing a full list of all the features and improvements. This will be available on the website tomorrow. So we are releasing Capture 2018 tomorrow morning European time. That means you will be able to download Capture and purchase your upgrades tomorrow. The upgrade prices and the product structure remains the same as they were before, which means the prices are the same as they were for the Nexum upgrade. We will of course be updating all of this information on the website tomorrow, but the information that is on there now actually applies for what will be true tomorrow as well. And as some of you surely know already, we are already within our so-called grace period, which has been on for a bit more than a month, I believe. That means if you purchased a Capture product or an upgrade during the past month, then you will be receiving a complimentary upgrade to Capture 2018 within the next days. So, all information will be available on the website tomorrow. We are also going to be creating a dedicated page for the rollout of the new rendering engine. This is going to list the features that are yet to be released during the rollout, as well as any known issues we are aware of at the moment that are not fixed yet. In the event that there are graphics card or systems that don't work well in the new rendering engine, we are also going to list them on this page. More information about this is going to follow on social media and on our website after the release. I would also like to invite you all, if you're able to come to our booth at the ProLight and Sound show in Frankfurt in a couple of weeks, where of course we will be showing off Capture 2018. Hopefully you've been able to try it out a bit by then, so that if you have any questions, you can come to us and we'll be happy to show you how things work in Capture 2018. So finally, I'm going to move on to a question and answer session, given that we have some questions, that is. So bear with me for a second as I check here. And we do have a couple of questions indeed. Question number 1 from Josli Varela. When will we be able to add custom fixture profile pictures? This is not something we have planned, but I do hope that the new product pictures in the library tab in fact solves the problem you're describing here. Stephen Jolly is asking if it's going to be possible for the project settings to be pre-filled with default choices. This is not something we have covered in Capture 2018, although you can reuse project content such as plots and reports from other project files. Gert-Jan Feiten, please excuse my horrible pronunciation, asks, I have bought Capture Nexum today, but didn't activate the key until now. Do I get now the Nexum or 2018 version after release? If you purchased a Capture Nexum license, then you will be getting Capture Nexum right now, and you will need to use the license in Capture Nexum. However, we are going to reach out to you by email within short and send you a new license key file for Capture 2018. So there's nothing you need to do, just hold in there for a little while and you will be getting access to Capture 2018. Then I have a question from Victor Zeiser who's asking, is recent per file or software wide? Which unfortunately I do not quite understand. So I'm going to have to move on to Nailuj Trekchir, who's asking, what about CPU single thread performance regarding DirectX? So the old OpenGL engine, which is still the default in Capture 2018, is currently single threaded. The new rendering engine is likely going to take advantage of multi-threading. It does not at the moment, but as I said, it is being rolled out. So it's unclear actually at this point whether we're going to do it or not in Capture 2018. There's a lot of bits and pieces moving in the rendering engine and potentially some major performance improvements anyway, so I don't want to say too much about it at this point. Emiliano Morgia is asking about the export model with textures. This is not supported in Capture 2018, but is likely an improvement of the DWG export in a future version. Alex Johnson is asking if mirrored textures are available, to which I think I would say they already are. The one thing we do not support is perspective projected textures on import though, but that limitation remains. Boyd Neistein is asking about measurement updates. We haven't really done any changes on the way measurements work, although I would say that in comparison to Argo, which Boyd says he's using, there are big changes in the way measurements work thanks to the new snapping that was introduced in the recent release. John Rosley is asking, if I understand right, the new truss models will reflect the stringers and brace correctly so that we can model hang points more accurately. That is actually not the point of the improved truss modeling. It is more simply so that trusses appear the way the trusses are. So if you're looking at a truss with orthogonal braces from above, you see a truss with orthogonal braces. We have not gone down the road of specifically positioning these braces in any accurate way, no. Gertian is asking if in 2018 there's a possibility for a user library, which at this point there is not. And final question that I will be answering today is from Johannes Glöde, who is asking, if you export fixtures for MA2, do they always appear as dimmer or the fixtures I chose in Capture? So during the export, when you have made the initial settings, there is a second window appearing that lists all the fixtures used in the export. At that stage, you can give them any name or type number you wish, and that will be used in the file. If you do not do this, then the Capture built-in names will be used, and you will likely be getting the dimmer type in MA. However, MA also supports multi-select editing, so it is very easy to select a range of fixtures and choose the fixture type you want to use for them. It literally only takes a few seconds. And I will throw in a final question from Philip Amand regarding the export of patch to Jan's Vista, where I'm afraid we haven't really done anything special in Capture 2018. So with that, I would like to thank you all for watching our live webcast today. Keep in mind we will be posting more information on our website, and you will be able to download Capture 2018 and purchase upgrades starting from tomorrow. And please don't miss us in Frankfurt if you have your way there. We'll be in Hall 3, I believe. You will see lots of advertising about this from us anyway. So please drop by if you can. Thank you very much for watching. It's been great having you with us, and see you soon again.